Yeah, you can sneak in.
Oh, yeah. Usually it costs me former congressman or former director, you know. Yeah. The new era. Hey, Troy. Hey.
Nice to see you.
Nice outfit.
Hello.
I'm glad somebody's getting something to eat.
Hi.
So you're gonna be my governor.
Hey, nice to meet you. You bet. And everybody else.
Good morning.
Pleasure. Thanks.
We need you, man. Yeah.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Guys can move up here now if you want. They're gonna come along here for now. Upstairs. You want to?
She's already seated. I don't
Well, that'll help some patients.
So welcome to Lily's Kitchen Table here in Grove City. This is my hometown where I was born and raised, as you can see. My parents dedicated their career to people with disabilities. They set an example that taught me about true public service and about being a voice for those who really need one.
I'm sorry, sir, we need to adjust your mic there.
Okay.
We do a test? Are we good? Are we good back there?
And that's the audience, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Audio? Nothing.
Okay. That's fine, we'll start it again. Do you need a level? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do we have more?
Can you boost?
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Still more?
Very, very low.
Must be a banker doing your audio.
Check.
That's it.
Great.
Wow. Now do you need less? Alright. We'll do it this way. DJ style. Alright, ready?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Lily's Kitchen Table here in Grove City. This is my hometown where I was born and raised. My parents dedicated their careers to people with disabilities, and they set an example that taught me about true public service, about being a voice for people who really need one. I've taken these lessons with me throughout my life. I served as Ohio treasurer, where I helped small businesses get the financing they needed to create jobs in our communities. As Attorney General in the midst of the financial crisis, I held Wall Street accountable by recovering $2 billion for taxpayers and retirees, putting money back in their pockets that never should have been taken from them in the first place.
Yes.
I've been a consistent advocate for hardworking Ohioans. For the last 6 years, I've had the honor of serving our country as the first director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It was created in reaction to the devastating financial crisis that hit Ohio especially hard. When I started there, we only had about 50 employees, but over time, we built it into a powerful force for good. We took enforcement actions against the biggest banks and largest financial companies in our country, recovering $12 billion for 30 million Americans who'd been cheated or mistreated. We created a state-of-the-art consumer complaint system that gave people a voice, that has now received well over 1 million complaints from all over the country. It's helped consumers get errors fixed on their credit reports when nobody would listen to them. Stop harassing phone calls from debt collectors at all hours of the day and night, and get justice for military service members who were gouged on their car loans. All these experiences have led me to this moment, and I'm announcing today that I'm running to be the next governor for the state of Ohio. To the challenge. It seems to me that what people are looking for in a governor is someone who cares about the things that matter most in their lives, and someone who has the ability to take on big challenges, solve problems, and make their lives better. So this campaign will be about my priorities as governor. As governor, I'll focus on the kitchen table issues that keep families up at night, like the cost of health care and college, how to find that better job, and how to be able to save for retirement. I'll bring people together to achieve real change. We did it during the foreclosure crisis by rallying state and local officials, our great nonprofit agencies, and many from the private sector to save people's homes. And we did it again at the Consumer Bureau on a national scale by working with libraries, social workers, community banks, and many others. I will deliver results, and I'll do it the Ohio way, the way I've always done things, not by stirring conflict, sowing division, or pitting people against one another. We're seeing way too much of that from Washington, D.C. And here in Ohio, we're seeing our state legislature wage a relentless war against local government. It is wrong, and I'll put a stop to it. It's no accident that we're announcing here today at Lily's Kitchen Table in my hometown. For the next few days and over the coming year, we'll be traveling around the state, meeting with Ohioans about the kitchen table issues that affect their lives. I know that when we pull together and work together, we can solve these problems. I look forward to doing that as the next governor of Ohio.
And with that, we're going to take a couple questions from press. So just to get us started, Kevin.
Hello, Mr. Cordray, how are you? Good to see you. The Republicans, the Houston DeWine ticket, said that if they were to win the governor's seat, they would make the opioid problem in our state priority number one. You didn't mention that. What do you see as your priority number one, and is the opioid issue at the top of your agenda?
So my focus for the last 15 years in local and state government, and now the last 6 years at the national level, has been on the issues of economic insecurity that cause people and families to lie awake at night, having trouble struggling to pay the bills, how they're going to make ends meet, how they're trying to fashion a better future for themselves. The opioid crisis in Ohio is one of the crises we'll have to face and surmount. And by the way, like the foreclosure crisis that hit us a decade ago, it's a problem that is overwhelming the state. It's not within anybody's particular job description to deal with it, and it will take leadership and bringing people together to solve it. That's what I will do.
Yeah.
Dan with WCMH.
We certainly saw you in Washington, D.C. in your role there. What went into your decision to bring your leadership back to Ohio?
So there's a long story there, but I'll try to tell it as a short story today. Back at the beginning of the year, 3 days before he left office, President Obama wrote me a letter. He wrote me a letter describing the work he felt we had done at the Consumer Bureau, commending us and encouraging us and telling me to stay at it and keep fighting. I decided that I should do that, and I would, and I stayed throughout almost the entire year. There were important things for us to do there, and although I could feel in my bones as the year went on that I should be somewhere else, getting started on doing something else, I needed to finish my work properly there and be satisfied that I wouldn't regret for the rest of my life things that we put years of work in on, like the payday lending rule, which we finalized this fall. But as I said, I could feel as the year went on that there was a bigger fight developing back here in Ohio, and it was a fight that was seen as over the soul of America in terms of how we handle politics, how we handle our communities, how we treat one another. And that's something that I want to be part of, and I'm here to fight, to run, to be governor of Ohio, and to show a different leadership direction and style than we have seen.
And with ABC.
Mr. Cordray, Democrats have been shut out of statewide office for 8 years now. In light of what we saw last year with President Trump winning the state by a wide margin, I mean, how do Democrats get back into statewide office?
So Democrats had been shut out of statewide office for 8 years in 2006 when I ran for the Ohio Treasurer position, and I won that year by 600,000 votes. And in 2008, in the special election for Attorney General, after the scandal and the resignation in that office, I won that office by 900,000 votes. In 2010, with Mike DeWine, I ran a dead heat that he won by a point, and I'm looking forward to what may be a possible rematch this year.
Jesse with the Inquirer.
So your meeting the CFPB has created a bit of a power struggle dynamic at that agency. I guess do you have any concerns about the state that it is in right now as far as leadership goes?
Sure, I think if you care about something, you always have concerns about the direction for the future. The situation was that my term was going to be coming to an end in just a few months. It was time for me to make this decision to come back and run for governor, which I decided to do. There was always going to be a power struggle once I departed, and there will be a new direction for the agency. It is my expectation that people who profess to believe in consumer protection and looking out for people will make sure that agency remains strong. And if they don't, I will be one of the most vocal critics of any new direction that deviates from that path.
Jim with the Blade.
You talked about feeling the need to come back to Ohio. You were in Washington for 6 years. Do you have any concerns that you bring back to the state for too long?
Actually, I wasn't in Washington for 6 years. I commuted back and forth every weekend. And Jim, I made that trip as I did it the last time. I realized I'd done it over 300 times over the last 6.5 years. During that time, Peggy and I and our family lived here. Our twins went from middle school, grew up through middle school, and one of the teachers is here today. They graduated from high school, and they just went off to college this fall. So every weekend, all through every one of those years, I was here in Ohio. I've always been somebody who talks to our neighbors and friends in this community. I know the community well. I participate in it. I have participated in it. This is my hometown, and I never became a creature of Washington. It always was strange to me, and I found that I developed new allergies when I went there, and I thought maybe that was the very best reaction I could have had.
Seth with the PD.
Some Democrats have expressed chagrin that they think you seated the CFPB over Donald Trump. I mean, are you worried that you've angered a lot of base, and you feel like you seated over control of that agency to Donald Trump?
So again, I could have stayed just a few more months. That was all it was going to be. My term was coming to an end. What was important was, as I looked forward and spoke with the president, that we go forward and do as much work as we could. I stayed and we did the arbitration rule to help people have the chance to go to court to be able to take their own initiative to right wrongs against them. That was, as you saw, overturned by the U.S. Senate on a 50-50 vote with the Vice President breaking the tie. We finished the payday lending rule, which was important, I thought, to me and to people all over the country who are being gouged repeatedly by amazingly high-cost loans, and particularly among other places here in Ohio. I did have a chance to sit down and speak with President Obama very recently, and he recognized and appreciated the work that we had done and how we fought so hard to do it, and considered it an important part of his legacy.
And you will see we have a video on our website today announcing and footage for President Obama with his permission is used in that video. The same is true of Senator Warren, my good friend who recruited me to the Bureau and helped us set it up. She is strongly supportive, and she's also in the video that we have on our website today.
Laura Bischoff, Dave Daly.
Rich, the Republicans have controlled the governor's office for 24 or 28 years, and you have lost more statewide races than you've actually won. So explain to me why you're the candidate and why 2018 was the year for Democrats.
Sure. Well, Laura, if you look back, I had two startup races, if you will. The very first time I ran for state office, and we all know how difficult that can be, but maybe those who've gone through it know it the most. I was beaten pretty handily by Betty Montgomery. Nobody knew who I was. I hadn't really had a chance to make an impression. Then there was a primary that came and went in about a nanosecond. So those are the two that you're referring to. Since 2002, as I served as Franklin County Treasurer, I ran for state treasurer in 2006. I won the state by 600,000 votes that year. In 2008, in the special election for Attorney General, when any Republican could have run in the wake of the Mark Mann scandals, and that seemed potentially promising, none of them wanted to run. Mike DeWine took a pass, Betty Montgomery took a pass, Jim Petro took a pass, Rob Portman took a pass. I won the race that year by 900,000 votes, and I tabulated 2.88 million votes throughout the state of Ohio. In 2010, Mike DeWine, who many consider to be their strongest candidate and may well be their nominee, he and I ran a dead heat in what we now know is a very difficult year for Democrats all over the country. If that's the matchup this year, I can tell you that there will be respect on both sides. Mike and I respect each other very much, and that's how I'll conduct our race, and I believe if you're asking, that's how he'll conduct his race. And if it is the matchup, I'm looking forward to the rematch.
Julie with the AP.
Hi, you're entering a crowded race. What will be your timing on a lieutenant governor candidate? Are you thinking about one of the people who are running? How do you view that?
So I'm not ready to get into all that today. As you may know, we've been scrambling for the past week to put some things together because I could not do any politics until I left the position at the Bureau. I think that's been widely aired in the way the Republicans in Washington were scrutinizing me. So it's premature to think about those things. I'm thinking about them, but I need to get this race going and get things organized and raise the money and do the things that you need to be a strong statewide candidate, and we will be able to do that. And we're going to get a lot of help nationally because there's a lot of interest in this race and a lot of interest in my candidacy. But as to those other things, I'm not here today to talk about other candidates or other office holders. I'm here to talk about Rich Cordray and my vision to be the next governor, and how I am someone who has shown a track record of delivering real results for people.
This is a quick follow-up to that. Are you prepared to run a tough Democratic primary and win it?
I'm getting into this race, and I'll take on all comers at whatever stage, and I think we will do very well, but it's up to the voters to decide that. I certainly learned that over the years.
Mark with the Dispatch.
What do you say to Justice Bill O'Neill, who says that he wants you to come around to his positions on legalizing marijuana and reopening mental institutions before he gets out of the race?
I don't have much of anything to say about that today. I'm not here to talk about other candidates or other office holders. I'm here to talk about what I intend to do and what I bring to the table as a candidate for governor, and that's the focus for today.
Joe?
Back in the last election, a lot of Democrats who supported Bernie Sanders, they stayed home. Other Democrats voted for Trump because his message on economics resonated with them. What are you going to be able to say and do to get all of those people back in your corner?
I think that as I just described, my message is all about economics. That's what I've been focused on for the last 15 years. Really is issues of what affects people's lives, how they live on the margin, how people understand that we have two different categories of working people these days. We have people who have a good, dependable job with a salary where it's directly deposited into an account, and they know they have health care, and they know they have provision for retirement. And then we have millions of people, and many, many people throughout Ohio who work either temporary work, or seasonal work, or on contract, or intermittent, They don't know from one week to the next exactly what number of hours they're going to work. They can't control any of that. Their finances go up and down. These are the people I've been across the country talking to, listening to, understanding, and thinking about what we could do from the Consumer Bureau to make their lives better. And I have lots of thoughts, there'll be plenty of time for all of this, about what I could do as governor to improve their lives and understand and focus on how we can make their lives better.
So we need to be respectful to our hosts here at the restaurants. We've got time for 2 more questions. Shane?
State unemployment's kind of been running above the national unemployment rate. What would you do differently when it comes to job creation, getting companies in to create jobs, and then what would you do differently than what's currently being done by the current administration?
So it's hard to know exactly what's being done with Jobs to Hire these days. It's not exactly the most transparent mechanism we've seen for economic development. So I don't really, it's hard to make a judgment about that. But one thing I will say, and this goes back to my background when I was state treasurer, I think that governments all over the country, state and federal, have done a very poor job of supporting and nurturing and encouraging and helping our small businesses expand and grow. That's something that I focused on very closely when I was state treasurer. We had the low interest loan program that Mary Ellen Withrow, who by the way is co-chair of my campaign, started back in the 80s. It had fallen into disuse, and we revved it up, rebranded it as Grow Ohio, and hundreds of businesses throughout the state got help from us. That's the way to grow jobs in our community. It's harder to do because it's easier to deal with a few large corporations. That's always simpler. But that's the way we'll improve our communities, is by growing and expanding employment through our small businesses, who after all create 2 out of every 3 new jobs in the economy. That'll be a big focus for me.
And final question, Dustin with Gonworth.
If elected governor is likely to be faced with a heavily Republican legislature, how do you plan to work with them and achieve your goals?
So that's something I've thought a lot about. What's the prize at the end of the rainbow? And one of the things that I will say to you is I will be firm with the legislature about things that I think are red lines. This war that they have waged consistently on local governments across Ohio, taking money from them when those are the local governments that are on the front lines of dealing with things like the opioid crisis and the face-to-face problems in our communities. It is wrong and it is not helpful to the state. To take money from them and hand it back to taxpayers in tax cuts that are skewed toward the wealthy, and to brag about that is no way to run a government. And if I need to take them on that, I will. And on other issues, we will look to work together. When I first went to the legislature, many years ago now, we had a Republican Senate and a Democratic House. I was there as a freshman, and I was very effective at getting legislation passed. I think it was 10 or 11 bills during my time there on things like community service education, a lot of children and youth issues, and a lot of crime issues. We only could do that by working across the aisle. I can do that, but it will take different parties working together, and I will work hard to bring them together. But I will have specific goals and change in mind, and I will fight for that change. As I've shown, I will fight for it as I did in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, folks, so much.
God bless you. Go get it.
Can we take a picture?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's good. Actually, the campaign.